Hey guys, this is BiXX. Welcome to another Mentoring Monday, and happy holidays. Hope you enjoy the new studio set. Sometimes when I fly back from Amsterdam, while in the middle of the flight, I experience imposter syndrome about being in the music industry. I don't really understand why I feel this way. It's kind of strange. Why on the flight? So I decided to do a little research on this topic and talk about it today. From doing some research, I discovered that imposter syndrome characteristics fuel my workaholic tendencies. As you may have guessed, today's topic is about imposter syndrome. And I'm going to present this in 3 parts. I was hoping to do it in 1 part, then even 2 parts, but it got so interesting and powerful, and also very common in 70% of the population, that I want to do this right. So it'll be 3 parts. I'm going to give a simple definition of imposter syndrome by asking some questions. Do you ever find yourself consistently experiencing self-doubt, even in the areas that you typically excel? Do you often feel like a phony or a fake in spite of all your accomplishments? These feelings are a common phenomenon called imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome can feel like nervousness accompanied by the belief that you'll be found out. And it may also manifest itself as negative self-talk. Symptoms of anxiety or depression often accompany imposter syndrome. The irony is that people with imposter syndrome are often highly accomplished and impressive individuals. On the outside, there's no apparent reason for them to feel like an imposter, and yet they still do. That is what makes it such a challenging psychological phenomenon that needs to be better understood. Not only can imposter syndrome infect your internal feelings about your work or your self-worth, but it also can affect the way you approach projects, relationships, or other areas of your life where you're feeling insecure. These feelings can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Next, I'm going to talk about the 5 types of imposter syndrome. See if you fit into one of these or multiple types. Number 1 is perfectionist. This type of imposter syndrome involves believing that unless you're absolutely perfect, you could have done better. You feel like an imposter because your perfectionist trait makes you believe that you're not as good as others might think you are. Number 2, the expert. The expert feels like an imposter because they don't know everything there is to know about a particular subject or a topic, or they haven't mastered every step in the process. Because there is more for them to learn, they don't feel like they've reached the rank of expert. Number 3, the natural genius. In this imposter syndrome type, we feel like a fraud simply because we don't believe that we are naturally intelligent or competent. If you don't get something right the first time, or it takes longer to master a skill, you feel like an imposter. Number 4, the soloist. I see some producers that fall into this. It's also impossible to feel like an imposter if you have to ask for help to reach a certain status. Since you couldn't get there on your own, you question your competence or abilities. I believe this is actually counter to, or the opposite, of getting the best results. Working in teams and getting help will often lead to the best product. And last, number 5, the super person. This type of imposter syndrome believes that you must be the hardest worker to reach the highest levels of achievement as possible. And if you don't, you're a fraud. Personally, I think this type applies to me. I've always tried to outwork everybody, overwork and overprepare. Why do I do this? Well, let's find out by the end of this topic. How do you know if you have imposter syndrome? As I mentioned before, it's estimated that 70% of people in this world will experience at least 1 episode of this phenomenon at some point in their lives. If you wonder whether you might have imposter syndrome, ask yourself the following questions. Do you agonize over the smallest mistakes or flaws in your work? Sometimes I do this. I remember the mistake and not the great work. Do you attribute your success to luck or outside factors? Are you sensitive to even the most constructive criticism? This is very important. Are you defensive or are you coachable? Do you feel that inevitably you'll be found out as a phony? Do you downplay your own expertise, even in areas where you are genuinely more skilled than other people? What does imposter syndrome feel like? An inability to realistically assess your competence and skills. Attributing your success to external factors. Criticizing your performance. Fears that you won't live up to your expectations. Overachieving. Personally, I've always felt the need to overachieve. Sabotaging your own success. Self-doubt. I've experienced a lot of self-doubt in my life, but surrounding myself with people who believe in me has really helped. Setting very challenging goals and feeling disappointed when you fall short. These are all characteristics and feelings of self-sabotage. I'm going to end part 1 of this topic right here for time's sake. In part 2, I'm going to talk about the impact of imposter syndrome and what it looks like in the everyday part of your life. In part 3, I'll talk more about coping with imposter syndrome, so I hope you can join me. I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Remember, it's never too late to reinvent yourself. Cheers.